Hey, what's your problem? You have business problems? We have business solutions.
Sometimes.
Well, maybe. Life is a fight. In business, every day is a fight.
It's true.
So, hey, what's your problem?
Yes, John David Wells, the big voice guy. Thank you, sir, for being the voice of this show. Check in out at the Wells Report. This is a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. And that one thing, because it's always something that keeps us up, or is in the back of our mind, percolating, bothering us. And that's what we talk about, generally, is the problem that most people face. Because it's always something. This is a video and audio podcast. Go to whatsyourproblempodcast.com and check us out. This is the year 2023. We're going for 10,000 average downloads per episode. If you could help us out by subscribing, sharing, rating, telling your friends about it, suggesting guests. I've actually had somebody reach out, take me up on it. We're going to have them on in the next month or so. You'll hear about that coming down the pike. I am your host, Jim McCarthy, with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com. And today, been trying to get this gentleman on for quite some time when we finally made it happen. Coming all the way down from Springfield, Tennessee, Dr. Grant Bell. Thank you, sir, for coming out here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invite.
Yeah. So why, typically I have business owners and professionals. Dr. Grant Bell is the principal of the Innovation Academy up in Springfield, Tennessee. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Formerly known as Springfield Middle School. And it is a STEAM
magnet school.
I almost got
12.
that. STEAM magnet school. So you're covering the second half of the educational career of children up there in Springfield.
Yes.
The reason why I'm having Dr. Grant Bell on, because we had an introduction made by Mr. Craig Jones, who I used to work with in the radio business back in, 05 to 2013. And Craig lived up in Springfield. His kids, I believe, went to your school, right?
That's correct. And they actually, they relocated to
Texas,
yeah. San Antonio market, but they live in Bernie, which is where George Strait is from. To give you an idea,
that's so up
really
his alley.
Quaint little community, and they're enjoying it. But we missed the Jones family.
Yeah. So he was connecting you and I a long time ago to do a video of sorts. And back out when I was doing the white background VidSigs videos, you came down to the house. You're not familiar. You're very familiar with coming down to this part of the state to shoot stuff.
That's right.
And you had me do a series of videos over the years. You keep on bringing me back to do new videos and such, which I am very appreciative about. And it's been a very fruitful relationship. And the last time we spoke was like, just sitting down and talking to you. I'm like, man, I got to get you on my podcast. You've done so much here at this school to create, just practical training around children and stuff like that. I mean, how did everything start with you? Actually, first off, before we get into everything, before I forget, we're going to do something called, you chose the dad joke challenge, right? Because you're a dad. Mm-hmm. So to get things going, I almost forgot to do the feature. It's been a while since I recorded. Been about a week.
Okay.
So this is the Dad Joke Challenge. It's sponsored by, or powered by, it'syourshow.co, which is the company that produces this podcast. If you want a podcast like this, we can produce it for you. Reason why you want a podcast is because it's a marketing machine. You can actually pull all those clips that you see on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the short videos that come from natural, authentic conversations. And I tend to do it like a fly on the wall, or we can do clips where you're looking directly into the camera with, the thought leader stuff that you see out there. So check us out, it'syourshow.co. And the way the feature works, Dr. Bell, is you tell the joke. We're going to try it differently because you've got dad jokes at the ready, right?
I do.
Okay. So I guess we'll start with you. You tell a dad joke and we'll volley back and forth. We'll tell 5 or 6 of them, and whoever laughs loses.
Okay.
Ready?
Well, as a principal, I have to be kind of a quasi-counselor.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. And people come to me with issues quite a bit. Well, over this past weekend, my wife, she was so upset, very upset about something, and she was crying, and she came up to me and told me, and I listened, and then I put my hands on her shoulders, and I said, bargain. She said, thank you, that means a great deal.
I just got that. Okay, I lose a point. I laughed. Okay, here's mine, and I'm pulling them off randomly off of a website. If you see a crime at an Apple store, would that make you an eyewitness?
Yes.
Well, you answered the question, but crazy.
Or,
all right, your turn. You got another one for me?
what is it? If you are hired as a security guard in an Android shop, are you a guardian of the galaxy?
That's a good one. That's pretty good. That's not bad.
Kind of followed on yours.
Well, we'll chalk it up to the next one. There we go. If the early bird catches the worm, I'll just sleep in until there are pancakes.
Well, you know what's worse than finding a worm in your apple?
What's that?
Finding half a worm.
That is true. That is very true. Okay, we'll do one more and we'll get on with it. The wedding was so beautiful that even the cake was in tears.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Enough of that. One more. Go ahead.
I can follow that one though.
One more. There we go.
I went to a wedding where two antennas got married. The wedding wasn't that great, but the reception was off the hook.
I was about to say the reception. Yep. Oh my gosh. This is why I tell you, dad jokes originated from Stephen Wright. You remember Stephen Wright, the comedian? He was dry. All of his stuff are dad jokes. All of his things.
His dryness is what was so funny about him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
His delivery was on point.
Yeah. What was it? He said, I left home one day, and when I came back, all my furniture had been stolen and replaced with exact replicas.
Yes. I have a circular driveway. I can't get out. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's good. If you can pull it off.
Yeah, he was really good. He still is really good. He's one of those guys you're like, wait, he didn't die, did he? But then you realize he's still alive.
I hadn't seen that guy in 25 years.
Yeah, he's probably just as reclusive as he seems in real life as he is on stage. So there you go. The Dad Joke Challenge brought to you by it'syourshow.co. Check them out. Check us out and all that fun stuff. So on we go with Mr. Doctor, Dr. Grant Bell. It's almost like a Doctor Strange moment there. You ever watch that movie?
I have.
Mr. Doctor.
Yeah, Mr. Doctor.
Yeah.
Kids do that to me all the time as a principal. Mr. Dr. Bell. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not really a doctor. I want to be very clear about that. I don't perform surgery and give medical diagnosis, but I guess I've gone as far as you can go in the education field. And
that's a doctorate, though, right?
And that's a doctorate, yeah.
There's masters and then the next level up, right?
Yeah, you have your undergrad, your master's, then you can get an EDS, which is education specialist, or a plus 30. And then another 30 is a doctorate, and you write a dissertation.
Right.
So that's usually a document of research it's usually over 100 pages long.
Yeah. So I mean, last time we spoke, we were finishing up a video shoot, and we have spoken about you and your personal brand and how, and like, dude, you could totally be a speaker up on stage with all the things that you've done because you have the credibility. You've got the track record of doing what you did with the school. But going back, you're kind of in the family business, right? Your dad was a teacher there and a principal as well.
Well, it was my grandfather, Philip Bell. He was born in 1900.
Yeah.
And he got his master's from Vanderbilt. He went to the People's Tucker School in Springfield, Webb School, went to some really great schools, and got his master's from Vanderbilt in 1938. That master's is hanging in my office.
Yeah.
And he became the principal of Springfield High School. That was a brand new building built during the New Deal. with federal dollars, city dollars, and matching federal dollars. It cost $289,000 to build that school.
Crazy.
Back then, and he became the principal and served as principal through 1959.
Wow.
And then he re-entered the classroom for a little over 10 years, teaching Latin and literature and U.S. history. Most knowledgeable person I've ever known. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my childhood was spent in his lap. He was always smoking a pipe, and that's a big memory. It's that smell of that, what is it, Prince Edward pipe. And he spent more time getting that pipe working than he did smoking it, I
Actually
believe.
Enjoying it?
Yeah, packing it and lighting. And he had these old polyester pants that people wore back in the 70s, dress pants. And if you held them up, it would look like Starry Night, Vincent van Gogh.
Oh, wow.
Because all the sparks had burned little bitty holes in them.
Nice.
But he would quote poetry.
Wow.
Latin. He could take a poem and say it in English and then convert it to Latin. And he used to do that with Starry Night or Starry, Starry Night. Mm-hmm. And Invictus was his favorite poem. And I know that by heart. I won't bore you with it, but that's a really cool poem. But he just knew so much. He was such a learned, I guess if that's the word, man. And he inspired a lot of our family members to become educators. So out of Granddaddy, he had a son and 2 daughters. The 2 daughters were teachers. Now, my dad was a manufacturer's representative. He went in a different direction.
I see.
And he was a salesman. But then I've got cousins that have been principals and teachers. He really impacted the entire family. So that's what ultimately led me into education, was that foundation of the Bell family.
The legacy.
The legacy.
Yeah. So were you always an educator? Did you have a stint in the private sector at all?
Well, like a lot of young men, I looked to my dad and what he did. He was very successful as a manufacturer's rep and a salesman. He had a wonderful personality, and he met with a lot of engineers and people and built relationships. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's what I'll do.
That's sales. That's
so
good sales.
I went to the University of Alabama and degreed in marketing, advertising, moved to Atlanta to take on the world. And I worked in some different sales jobs. And, I found that I wasn't a very good salesman.
Right.
And I wasn't very happy either, because there just didn't seem to be much purpose.
Right. What were you selling?
Well, I started out selling insurance, whole life insurance,
right.
Cold call when I started. Terrible at that. And then I got in the uniform rental business. There's some big players in that, Aramark, Centos, G&K Services. Mm-hmm. And worked in that for a while, and did better at that, and I had some good people that I worked with, but I was just working to live.
Yeah.
And
wasn't a passion.
No, not at all. And then my buddy that was my roommate down there, that we had gone to college together as well, he got married, and all of a sudden I'm by myself. I'm at kind of a junction in my life, and there wasn't much in Atlanta anymore, and I moved back home and tinkered around, but I finally thought, you know what? It was an epiphany. I'll never forget it. You hear about people having epiphanies. I was. It just jumped in my head, and I said, I'm supposed to be an educator. And I went and talked to the director of schools for Robertson County, and I said, I want to be a teacher, and I didn't have a teaching degree. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget what he told me. He said, you need to go substitute for a while, because if you can survive substitute teaching, then you can do anything. And
It's like,
you know what?
substitute teaching is the New York of if you can make it
if you can
there.
make it substitute teaching in an at-risk school, like a Title I school, you can do anything.
Right.
And so I got my first call to go to a school. I was scared to death. And
substitute teaching, you're teaching whatever subject it may be.
well,
right?
you go in and it might be English, might be reading, might be science.
You got to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The teacher leaves lesson plans, and a lot of times it's worksheets or something like that. You're kind of managing the classroom to make sure nobody gets hurt. You know, trying to successfully get through the day. And this story has a really good ending because I went in and I got dressed and, put a tie on. I was scared to death, and I went in. And I got through the day and had a pretty good time. And that first day was 1998, and it was Springfield Middle School.
Right.
And everybody said, man, Springfield Middle School is a pretty tough place to
It's a good
do
proving
this.
ground.
But I did it, and I guess 12 years after that, I was the assistant principal at that same school. And then 2 years after that, I was the principal. So it was a journey to get there. But
That was right around the time I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2012 or so, right?
Yeah, that was the first video that we did when the school, I think whatever situation you're in, you see the reality of where you are and where the organization is. I've always been very fortunate because I'm not always the smartest guy in the room, and I sincerely mean that. I'm not. But I've always had an ability to kind of see things in the future on the hill, on a hill far away, and imagine what it could be.
You're a visionary.
Of it, yeah, I guess. Well, that's
how I see you.
That's the only skill I've got is being a visionary. That I saw the condition of the school, the frustration of the staff, the behaviors of the kids in the building. The biggest thing was the low expectations that were in that school. And almost no expectations.
Now, was this during the time that you were a teacher there as well?
No, I was a teacher at a Greenbrier Middle School for 11 years, taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade social studies and coached football. And those 11 years were just wonderful. And I think the first year that I was a teacher, I tell people, and I'm not joking, I was the worst teacher in the school. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I went back to school to get a master's because if I did that, the university would approve me to the HR department to get hired as a teacher. So I was on a permit the first 2 years. And the first year, I didn't go through the traditional student teacher training and everything, but I just didn't know what I was doing. And when I see those kids sometimes, and they're not kids anymore, I kind of hide my face, because I'm embarrassed. The second year, I started to figure it out. And the third year, I had it figured out.
Yeah.
And I moved from being the worst to a very, very good teacher just through experience, and the light just clicked inside. And those were some of the best years I've had was teaching. But going into leadership in 2010 at Springfield Middle School, I worked under a great mentor, Dr. Mike Morris, and Cindy Webb was an assistant principal, and they were really deep thinkers. And we used to have a lot of really deep philosophical conversations. And that was a very important time for me. Because if you go in and your mentor is not maybe the best, that's going to have a big impact on you.
Sure.
Your mentor has to be top notch to really help and guide you along the process. But I call those first 2 years that I was there, the assistant principal from 2010 to 2012, I call them the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating.
So this is your first experience at Springfield Middle.
Yeah. It was, there's 22 schools in Robertson County. It was the lowest performing school in the county. Well, it was so low performing, I would call us an outlier.
Yeah.
You had kind of on a bell curve, you would have a lot of the schools packed around the middle. We were way down here. But I think everybody knew the challenges that we had. Almost 90% of the kids in our building qualified for free or reduced lunch. So there was poverty is the biggest. It's not. There's a lot of things, there's factors, but poverty is the most detrimental factor to a child being able to be educated at a high level, and had a lot of chaotic behaviors because a lot of the kids were living in a chaotic situation.
Sure.
It was all that they knew. The way that I get what I want is to be outrageous. And, so extremely low academic performance. The first year that I was there, a DHA is what we call a disciplinary hearing, and that's when something so bad happens that I have to take it to the Board of Education and say, this is what happened. And the Board of Education decides whether or not that child will go to alternative school or not.
Right.
And that's usually drugs, weapons, a threat, or an accumulation of behaviors where it's just every day. The first year, I did 25 DHAs.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is an outrageous amount.
Right.
And every year since then, it's dropped just a little bit as we've been working the culture of the building. It's, I read one time, culture isn't just one part of your school. It's the only part.
Yeah. You're going to have a bad culture, a good culture, or indifferent.
So
that's in business too.
We had extremely low the staff had extremely low expectations. The kids had extremely low expectations. They'd always been told, this is the worst school in the county. I guess that it was, if you put in a lot of factors, academics, behavior, all of those things. But I knew that it was going to take radical change, but very deliberate change to change that. It wasn't going to be, you don't change. Culture is like, imagine having a freight liner or a big cruise ship. And they say, turn that thing around in the river. Well, that's going to take a lot of skill, patience. It's a difficult thing to do.
And time.
And time. Yeah, you don't do it in a year.
No.
It may take. And see, here's the thing. I don't know that you ever arrive where you're going, where you want to be, but it's that journey.
It's the North Star.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I think when you and I first met, you were just getting into that journey. It was beginning, because I believe you took the helm of principal right around the time that you and I had met. And whether you knew it or not, I could see the construct of culture that you were building. There was a North Star. You didn't refer to the kids as students. You referred to them as scholars. And that's a mindset shift. No, you're not just a student, you're a scholar. You raise the bar in just the labeling of things and how they started thinking about themselves, right?
That was very purposeful.
Right.
It seems like a little thing, but it's not. And it was, I remember it like it was 5 minutes ago. There was a young man in my office. He'd done something really silly, but he was in there and I was helping him out. We had a good conversation. As he walked out, I said, Tyshawn, you're a gentleman and a scholar. And he kind of laughed and walked out, and I thought, scholar. And, I went to my assistant principals and I said, let me talk to y'all about something. And you met Emily Hollingsworth and Angel Williams. We shot the first video with me, and I said, we're going to do something radical. And I said, we're going to completely throw out the word student and call kids scholars. And you have no idea the backlash that we got for that.
Really? From parents and stuff? And
well, from colleagues, from people all across the district. Oh, they're going to start calling their kids scholars now. It was something that just hadn't been done. And even some of the teachers that were on staff at that time with low expectations balked at the idea. I even heard things like, these kids aren't scholars. Why should we call them that? And, well, those teachers that said those things, it didn't last very long.
Right.
I wanted to build a staff of teachers.
You got to have people. That's the thing, is that, did you realize you were doing that at the time? Because you're the classic example of culture is formed by the C-level executive, the CEO. You're the CEO of that school. You're the principal, right? So it all comes from you. You set the tone. And if it's part of your personality and who you are, that's going to filter down, And I would imagine something as outlandish at the time. Yeah, it would seem that way because it's so different. You're kind of was Lean on Me a big influence to you? The Joe Clark story back, the Morgan Freeman movie. You remember that?
No, I don't. Now
it's very similar.
I think I've seen parts of that, but I think he goes into a pretty rough school.
Very rough.
And
but
turns
again,
that around. But
he was a teacher at the school back in the 60s, and he comes back as a principal in the 80s when the movie's set, and the school took a turn for the worse. And then, he goes in, he's known for carrying the baseball bat around the school.
Yeah.
But he instills the culture of excellence. No, you're going to learn the school song. And it's, everything, it's amazing to me that you're somewhat aware of the story or the movie. It's almost, a play-by-play replication of what he did, minus the baseball bat. He didn't walk around with a baseball bat in school.
Well,
it's just helping. It's just basically, showing the kids that they got somebody that believes in them, man.
Well, the powerful thing, see, it started in a room with three of us, and I said, let's do this. And I had two people. Now, if people are listening to this, they're like, what's the big deal? I'm telling you, it turned into a deal that I never anticipated. As I said, some of the kids thought it was silly. Some of the teachers thought it was silly. Some of my colleagues throughout the county thought it was silly. I was kind of blown away by it. It was an unintended consequence. But
when you go through something like, let me just ask you real quick, when you have that much pushback and doubt, and they're planting, there's elements of them trying to plant seeds of doubt into your plan. Did you ever vacillate? Did you ever kind of capitulate towards that and say, well, maybe they're right?
No.
Or did you double down on your commitment to it?
No, we were, the way, I've got a term for things like that. It's called dirt clods. And if I can tell the story
Go ahead,
really quickly of growing up in Robertson County. Now, this story will make sense, and it's really the entire crux of my leadership is I grew up on a tobacco farm, and every May my granddaddy would take a International 140. It's a little small tractor. And we would put the tobacco setter on it. You hook it up on there. And you go to the field that's plowed and prepared, and you take some tobacco plants and you put them on that setter in a basket, and then two of us would sit out on the setter. Now, the tractor driver is looking one way to make sure that he has a straight row.
Yeah.
And my granddaddy would hold that steering wheel and just go straight across the field. and me and my buddy, a lot of times kids ride the setter, and this wheel comes around with fingers. You've got a little disc that cuts the ground open.
Right.
And as the wheel comes around, you have to take that tobacco plant and put it in there. And you can't even scratch your nose, because if you scratch your nose, you'll throw the rhythm off and you'll miss one, because it comes around every time. But so for 4 or 5 years, I rode the back of that setter. And one day, my grandfather had to run to town, and went over and jumped in his truck, and he said, "Grant, you go ahead and drive, and I'll be back from town in a little bit." And we had a third guy with us. Well, I immediately panicked, and I ran over and I stopped him. I said, "Granddaddy, how do you make straight roads like you do?" And well, he just said, "It's easy." He said, "Don't ever look at the ground where the tires are rolling over the dirt clods, because that's a thing that a lot of people will do. They'll look down at the ground." He said, "Look in the distance, and you see that oak tree sitting on the top of the hill." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look at that oak tree, focus on it, and go straight to it. And don't look away. Don't look down. And when you get to the end and look back, the road will be straight."
The picture you're painting here, my gosh, oak tree.
Oak tree on a hill.
One of the strongest trees out there.
And, well, that's what makes it so powerful, is it's a true story. And so I went across there. And, you're a nervous wreck, because you're like, I'm not even looking down at what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm just looking in the distance. But when you get to the end, the road was straight as an arrow. Now, at the time, it didn't dawn on me what I'd learned. But it was later in life, I realized whatever you're going for, you focus on that and you go. And don't pay any attention to the dirt clods that are going to be going past you, but keep your eye to the oak tree on the hill. And so I just, it's a metaphor where I just choose what our oak tree is going to be. Now, the key is getting as many people in the organization as you can on the bus, so to speak. I call it, we're taking the bus to the oak tree. And we're going to load the people on the bus. Now, if you don't have any business on the bus, we're going to get you off of the bus. But we want people that want to be on this bus going to that oak tree. And every now and then you may even have to change a seat on the bus. If a position is not working out for someone, put them in a position where they'll have more success. But you mentioned the naysayers, the criticizers. I just did not pay any attention whatsoever to them, because that's dirt clods. We are going to keep our eye on our destination, and that's where we're going. And I tell you what, when somebody is on a mission to do something, now if somebody goes in and clocks in and looks at their paycheck every Friday, and that's their motivation, you can compromise them, you can stop them, you can manipulate them. But when somebody is on a mission to get something done, you can't do anything with them. Because they're like a mule and stubborn, and you best just get out of their way. And I think that's the way I've treated this, taking all the things that we've done. The scholars was not for any adult. Calling the kids scholars was for the kids, because they'd been told their whole life that they weren't going to amount to anything. And we had to start creating the ability that they would believe that they could actually accomplish great things. So we were doing a lot of things, but scholar was just one little thing that we added that really had a lot of
Had a lot of impact.
It had a lot of impact that I never even anticipated.
You kicked the hornet's nest, so to speak.
Yeah.
Upset people with it. And
you think you're better than everybody?
Right.
I heard one person had said, well, if they've got scholars at Springfield Middle School, I don't ever want my kid to be a scholar.
Wow.
There were a lot of things that were said, a lot of hateful, hurtful stuff but we just ignored it and dirt clods. Yeah. And it's good to have a name for the things that bother you every day, because things are going to bother you every day. If it's in your faith,
it's always something.
There's always something. Yeah. If it's your family, there's something. And if it's your mission in this world or your occupation, there's always something. I've got oak trees for my faith life, for my family, and for my work.
Yeah.
And you pick those, and dirt clods, if you can laugh at some of your issues, and let's face it, some of them are not funny. Mm-hmm. Illnesses, deaths, hurt relationships. There's a lot of things that can happen, but most of the things that we get upset about are just dirt clods.
And it's funny because you think about a dirt clod, and what does a tractor do when it comes upon a dirt clod? It just crushes it. Yeah, the weight of the tractor just kind of smushes it and moves on. Yeah. Keeps on moving forward.
And because that tractor is on a mission to go wherever it's going. And so it goes.
What a metaphor.
Regardless.
That's a book right there, pal. You actually have a book coming out, don't you?
Well, I've got about 200 pages written of a book that I've entitled "The Oak Tree on the Hill."
I was about to say I really didn't have an idea of what the title was. I was going to say, "There's your title." Oh my goodness, I'm getting goosebumps.
So, and it's a lot of just reflection on the things that we've done to move the school to where we've moved it. We intend for our school to be, as an organization, a top 10 school in the state of Tennessee by 2025. Mm-hmm. And that's everybody in our organization is on board with that. The kids know what our goal is.
Yeah.
So, in 2010, we were in the lowest 10% of the state of Tennessee in schools, the lowest 10%. We intend as an organization to move that school into the top 10 in 2025. So we were an outlier at the very bottom, but we intend to be an outlier at the very top. And, becoming a magnet school is obviously.
What is a magnet school? I've always I know I should know what that is, but there's probably a lot of my listeners that aren't clear on it. So what defines and makes a magnet school?
Okay. A magnet school is a public school within a district that attracts kids that typically are working at a very high level. So a magnet attracts.
Right. Okay.
So
in the literal sense of the word.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's 6 middle schools in Robertson County, just to use us as an example. And every March, we have a lottery. We take applications from 5th graders across the county. We might get 200 or more applications for 100 available seats that we have. Now, you have to meet a certain academic benchmark with grades and assessments, teacher recommendations, things like that. And if you meet the benchmark, because we don't want to set a kid up for failure. If they're really struggling, they may not need to be in this program. So we have that. And then if we have 200 applications that pass the rubric or the benchmark, we have a lottery. We literally put every child, we give them a number, we put them into a bowl, and we have the county mayor. We live stream it all. We want to make sure we're completely transparent. But the county mayor will come and we pull out one number at a time, literally, and we write those down. And when we get to 100, we've got our sixth grade class.
It's like the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So here's a funny thing. How, 11 years ago, if you were to tell people that we're going to be taking applications and holding a lottery for kids that want to go to this school in, the next decade. I mean, you weren't doing that back then, right?
Well,
there were people that didn't want to go to the school because
no.
of its reputation.
That started about 5 years ago. There were a lot of families that would not send their kids to Springfield Middle School if they had means to not do that.
Right.
That might be moving to a different school district or going private. But there were a lot of families that did not want to send their kids to Springfield Middle School. And we knew that we had a bad reputation, and that was part of one of the things that we had to work. There was a perception, and in some cases it was true. Mm-hmm. There was a perception that it was a very low-performing school. Well, actually, that was the reality at the time. It was very low-performing and a lot of chaotic behaviors. Mm-hmm. It's hard to shock me anymore. I've seen it all.
Right.
And I've seen it every day. But people didn't want to send their kids to Springfield Middle School as a general rule. And so we started working the culture of the building, and then there came an opportunity. We started a STEM class. I didn't know much about STEM at the time. This was in 2014 probably, but we partnered up with Vanderbilt University. They had a program called the Astronaut Program, and we did a STEM class in the 8th grade, and I loved it. And
now STEM is an acronym?
For science, technology, engineering, and math. It's kids doing hands-on things, and
like the robotics classes, things like that.
Robotics is a great example of that. Yeah. And we've got a great robotics team as well, because we have a great leader for that robotics team. And we're going to Brentwood Academy in a couple of weeks. We got a team competing in the state.
Wow.
And
nice.
Brentwood Academy wins that thing every year, I believe.
Right.
But we're going to be competing in it.
What's the chances of you taking the gold in there?
Well, I think we've got just as good a chance as anybody,
right,
because we have some incredibly sharp kids. We've got a team of 4 that have made the state, and I actually opened the building up Sunday because one of them wanted to come up there and work on his robot on his free time. Yeah. And they actually build these. It was like an erector set.
Yeah,
I grew up with an erector set, but they build these things from scratch. And then you have to motorize them and give them a brain and do all these things, and they compete against other schools on a platform. Mm-hmm. And so we came in second last year, and we've got just as good a chance as anybody to win it. And so that's not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. And but to let you know how we got here, it was a journey. There's a line from one of my favorite books, The Alchemist, written by Pablo Coelho. He's a Brazilian writer. Mm-hmm. I believe he's from Brazil or Peru. I can't remember. But The Alchemist is a book that says, my favorite quote, "If you follow your dreams, the universe will conspire to help you."
Right.
Well, the thing is, do you really believe that, or is that some cheesy quote? I really believe it. If you are vision driven and dream driven, you can talk and work virtually anything into existence.
Yeah.
And into reality. And I knew that we wanted to be a great school. I didn't want to move up and be average. I wanted to actually go past everyone and become great. One of the finest schools in the state of Tennessee. And so that STEM, I really liked it. And then the United States Department of Justice became involved in our county. There was a lawsuit against our county because Springfield schools, and mainly Springfield Middle School, was the center of the lawsuit. There was a group of parents and community people that Springfield Middle School, it was a majority school. What that means is the majority of the kids in that school were in a minority.
Right.
And the outlying schools were not. So there's United States Department of Justice came in. They were going to rezone the entire district
Right.
and start busing kids all over the place to equal that diversity out. Well, working with the DOJ, we kind of floated the idea, why don't we make a magnet school, a STEM magnet school at that time, without the A. The A stands for arts. At that time, it was just STEM. And instead of busing kids out, let's start busing some of these kids from the outlying schools into our building. And that will shift the makeup of the building. And so the United States Department of Justice put that in place.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Was it the parents of the minority kids that were concerned about the diversification?
I believe it was just some community members that had kids in our school.
Right.
But they saw that Springfield Middle School, and to them, was not receiving. It was a very poor performing school, and it was not receiving the. There'd been a couple of new schools built that are fabulously beautiful, and we were kind of in an old building, 1938, with a lot of disrepair. And there was, it looked like an inner city school, basically. If you've seen one on TV, inner city school, that was us. And so we were able to get this magnet school, and it lessened the amount of kids that were going to be bussed all over the place. But now here's what happened. When we were able to get that magnet school, another vision jumped in my head. Why can't we make this a 6 through 12? Because it was a 6 through 8 at that time.
Yeah, middle school, right.
And I spoke to that vision just about daily. Now, that sounds like an exaggeration, and it's not. For years, let's make a 6 through 12. Let's make a 6 through 12. And people laughed at that idea.
Of course they did.
It didn't get any traction whatsoever. Who in the world?
Same old story over and over again.
Who would send their kids there?
Yeah.
And but
so you still had the same perception as a low performing.
But it was improving, and I'll tell you how I worked on. I had it's one thing to have a vision, but when you have a vision, you got to put in a pretty solid plan to go with it, or it's just a dream. It's a hope. I'll go through how we turned to a 6 through 12 real quick, but every day we spoke the impossible dream, and then I think it's been about 2 years now, the board called a vote. The Board of Education was the only group of people that could make it happen. But Stephanie Mason, who is the assistant superintendent of schools at that time, Stephanie was wonderful. She has passed away. But I spoke the vision to her every day. I said, Stephanie, we're going to make this 6 through 12. And she really loved the idea. And I used to always tell her, don't ever lose an opportunity to speak to the vision. So anytime I spoke in front of the Rotary Club or any group of people, I spoke the vision, 6 through 12. Well, they called a surprise vote 2 years ago, and it passed. And Stephanie was in the meeting. I was not there, and she called me and said, you're not going to believe what just happened. Hold on to your seat. She said they just voted for a 6-12, and it passed. And
how'd you feel at that moment?
I felt, well, you know what? You would think I would get up and jump, but I thought, okay, now the work starts.
That's what I was about to say.
Now we have captured what
now you got
we
what you
were
wanted.
after. Okay, let's roll our sleeves up. Now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so what? I didn't jump around the room. I told my wife, I said, you're not going to believe what happened. And it was such a wonderful feeling. But now let's get to work. What are we going to do to make this a great school? So another thing that my granddaddy said to me one time that always stuck with me was we cut hay every year for his cows for that winter. We baled back then. Everybody rolls now, but we would cut his field of Timothy hay, and I think it was his most nerve-wracking day every year because you had to cut the hay and get it in. Mm-hmm. And I was a little boy, and when you're a little boy, you throw the hay up on the wagon, and the man stacks the hay
because of heavy bales.
Because they're heavy bales, and you got to get them way up high. And they know
now, is it straw or is it hay?
No, this was hay.
Oh,
and
really?
Hay is heavy. Straw is pretty light, and you can flip a straw bale pretty good. But hay and Timothy is the field that he had, and it's dense and it's heavy. But Granddaddy said, "Get up there and load that wagon," and I said, "Granddaddy, I don't know how to load the wagon. How do I load it?" And he said, "Son, I don't care how you load it. Just get the wagon loaded." Mm-hmm. So simplistic.
Yeah.
But if people question, well, you are going to make this a great school, but now you've turned it into a magnet school, of course it's going to be great. And my answer is, I don't care how you get the wagon loaded. Load the wagon. Whatever it takes. So, we're filling that building up with kids. Their parents have applied, and they want them to go there. See, that's the key. Your public schools in the United States, if you live in a zone, that's where your kids go. They don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. Now, some parents move to zones because they love the school, but our school, you have to go through an application process. And so every kid in that room wants to be there.
Right.
Their parents want them to be there. That's where the magic happens, is when, you have families that value education and see the value, and they pass that on to their kids. So
I just think it's amazing that at one point you had parents that the school repelled people, and parents didn't want their kids going. And in a case of 5 years, that tide had turned. You started attracting people. You became a school of interest in a major way. Dude, that's an incredible story. Unbelievable.
Well, I look at it as part of the journey. Part of the story of what we've done. One of the things that we did to work the perception of the building, I thought, what do we got to do? See, as we began to shift the culture of the building and things were improving, there was still a horrible perception. It takes a long time,
absolutely,
to get rid of that in the public. And there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "To see once is better than to hear 1,000 times." And I said, we got to get people in here, and we have to have a vehicle to get them in here so that they can meet the teachers and the kids and see that all these horrible things that they hear
aren't true.
Right. And so working with a lady named Kathy Gunn, who is with the Robertson County Chamber of Commerce. Kathy is one of those people that gets things done. Mm-hmm. If you want to get something done, this is who you need to get in the community. Well, at that time, it was Kathy Gunn, and she was with the chamber, and it didn't hurt that one of her daughters ended up coming through our building. Mm-hmm. And she knew about the bad perception. So I said, what we got to do is have business people in the community adopt our teachers, come in for an open house, meet their teacher, go into the classroom. They commit to a teacher classroom visit once a semester. They can come greet kids at the door with us because we've always greeted the kids at the door.
I was going to ask about that.
Every single day.
Did you implement that, or was that something in place when you took over?
When Dr. Morris came to Springfield Middle School, he started greeting kids at the door. And I'd never thought of that, but I became involved in it. And it's just putting your eyes on every single child that comes in every single day. And, you know, some principals may be checking emails, they may be somewhere else in the building, but you have to make that a priority because there's a lot of things that could take you away from that. Mm-hmm. But if you say this is the highest priority I have from, you know, 7:45 in the morning till 8:20, then that becomes what you do. So that was my highest priority, to greet kids at the door and wish them good morning and shake hands with them and joke with them, but put your eyes on every kid that's coming in the building. And the parents see that when they're dropping the kids off. And they've commented before, I see you out there every day.
Yeah.
And that's because it's the highest priority.
Yeah.
The first thing. And it's one of my favorite things is that morning when they're coming in. And you know what? I've caught a lot of kids at the door that have I can tell that something's wrong. It's a little bit off. Yeah. And so I break away, put my arm around them and say, hey, what's going on today? You don't look like yourself. And you can get them steered to a direction to get them some help. You can tell a lot by a child by watching them get off the bus and come in the building. What are they bringing with them today? And but you have to make it a priority to be at that door every single day.
You see, guys, what Dr. Bell is doing, like every business leader should be doing, every CEO, you know, as practical as it can be. Acknowledgement goes a long way. It goes a huge way, especially when you're doing it for kids who come from, you know, troubled backgrounds or the home life isn't as good as it should be. They have a place of solace that they can be comfortable. They can kind of relax for at least, you know, 7-8 hours, and you're providing that place for them. You know, and you're starting it off with such a positive thing. I mean, you're speaking my language here, and it's an amazing thing. I mean, kudos to you. I think it's an amazing story, and you deserve a movie out of it. And I hope your book gets made into a movie. You know, it's because you turned it around, man. You really did like what people thought was the impossible.
I had some really great people that have.
And it takes a team.
It takes a team.
But you attracted the team. The people that were there, that were part of the culture, when you came to helm the principal seat, right? They either didn't believe or they became believers over time. That's getting that buy-in has got to come from one person. And your essence, your culture-driven mantras trickle down, man. It's like, and I love the fact that you're humble. It's not me. I got news for you, pal. You're more of a salesman than you realize. You sold that idea, you know. You weren't good at cold calling because that's transactional selling. You're good at relational selling. That's what you're good at.
Yeah, I was terrible. So failure, and I was miserable.
Yeah.
And you know, one of my favorite educational authors, Todd Whitaker, he says if the principal sneezes, the entire faculty or the school catches a cold.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The principal has to set, and this is not just a principal.
It's a leader.
Could be any leader. If you expect people to treat each other with respect in your organization, then you best not yell at somebody in front of others.
Yeah.
You have to. The most powerful way, I think it's the only way, to teach people how to do things is by modeling every single day for weeks, months, and years. Modeling. I don't raise my voice at children.
Right.
Now, that sounds pretty weird because what's the stereotypical principal or the vice principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? You know, yelling, chasing down kids. That's really kind of the stereotype that we have. But I've suspended kids and hugged them on the way out the door. Mm-hmm. It's how you treat people with dignity and respect is how you get people to get on the bus with you.
Right.
And then you'll find that they begin treating others the same way. You have to model every single day what you want others around you to do. And if you model yelling and sarcasm, adults get sarcasm. Sometimes 12-year-olds don't get sarcasm.
Right.
And so we don't do those things. And I can't think of a single time I've yelled at a child.
Right.
And because you have to model what you expect.
Right.
Every single day. And if there's an angry parent, now look, we're in a very emotional business, and parents get angry sometimes. I will tell you that years ago, angry parents were in my office just about every day. It's very rare now.
Yeah.
Because of the way that we treat people. I think we've built a reputation through years of actions. People know that we're fair with kids. But in the beginning, parents would come in and they wanted somebody's head on a platter. And before I would go into the meeting, I would stop. I didn't want anybody to see me. Sometimes I find a private place, but I say a prayer. And to help me to turn this situation around, not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of this parent, for the parent's child, for our school. Give me the ability to win somebody.
To show some light in the darkness of the situation.
To show some light in the darkness.
Yeah.
And it was very powerful. And you have to go in, even if it's an unhappy staff member, an unhappy child, or an unhappy parent, customer, whatever it is, whatever business you're in, there's a Bible verse, humble yourself before your Lord God Almighty, and in due time he will lift you up. I've taken that Bible verse and I shared this with our principals recently at a principal meeting. Whoever you're fixing to have an uncomfortable conversation with, humble yourself before that person, and in due time they will lift you up.
How easy it is to forget that, though.
Well,
Right.
The thing is, you have to be purposeful about it. You have to make it the highest priority. Don't ever go into an uncomfortable meeting without that thought. What do I want? Do I want to win this?
Yeah.
Or do I want to create a better relationship? Married men probably know this better than anybody. If you want to win that battle with your wife, or do you want to sleep in the big bed that night? You have to ask yourself, and I call that outcome-based decision making.
Yeah.
What do I want this? Do I want to belittle this parent and tell them to get out, and even have maybe the police officer escort them out so I can feel real big?
Yeah.
Or do I want to humble myself before them and mend this relationship? And I choose the latter. In every situation, don't try to win. Try to create a better outcome. And more times than not, you will.
It's so funny, you find the haters online, especially in comment sections of different posts and stuff, right? And recently I had a video go semi-viral where I talked about a football game that happened mid-January. It's one of the playoff games. And the extra point kicker missed 3 times in a row.
Cowboys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the ESPN graphics team put up a graphic that said 4th in a row missed. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what a mistake that was. Or, my conspiratorial brain goes towards the notion of, well, did they know he was going to miss? And then I, in my naivete about football, even though I have a very surface level understanding of it and stuff, and I enjoy watching it, especially lately in the past couple of years. So we watched the playoff games and such. I took a video of it, threw it up on Twitter, pinged all the right words and hashtags and things of that nature that was trending at the time. And because of that, it took off. And some people were like, oh my gosh, you're right. Other people were like, well, actually it was they're talking about the previous game. He missed an extra point kick.
So that's 4.
So it was 4. So, I'm like, okay, fair enough. But there was a couple of guys that, a couple of people that were just like, you're an idiot, and they're the keyboard warriors, right? And, my tact to respond to them, could have been vastly different. It could have been another, well, I can get as low as you and take you head on. But I chose to do what I call hater comment Tai Chi, where you kind of bundle what their energy is and say, you know what, dude, I'm going to absorb the blow and actually kind of package it up and give it back to you in kindness and empathy and say, listen, you know what? Yeah, you're probably right. I am an idiot when it comes to this stuff. That's okay. I'm okay by that. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It was a noob move. I completely understand. And their reactions to how I reacted to them were like, it's all good, man. You're a cool guy, Well, and eventually you win them over, right?
Do you want to make it worse,
right,
and escalate it, or do you want to turn it in the other direction?
Yeah.
Perfect example.
If you can't make a sale, make a friend.
If you can't make a sale, make a friend. That's good.
You could take that along with you and start espousing that.
I like that. I like that.
That was an old car business thing that someone taught me.
Well, I think that's true, and I think my dad did that.
Yeah,
it's
that's selling.
He
101.
had a way of he didn't sell water and wastewater equipment. He built relationships,
and that's the thing. Your relationships will be your legacy, and that's the new. Brad Lee says it all the time. Relationships are the new currency.
Yeah,
even in the hardest of times, if you have a good relationship with your inner circle. And the people that you have influence with, or they have influence with you, the people that like you and know you, you'll always be able to rely on them, especially with what you do. Hey, I'm having hard times. Does anybody know anybody that needs the service or product that I offer? And if they know that you need help, they'll go out of their way,
Very true.
And it's just amazing. But if you're a jerk, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
Rich Redmond, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, made his career with playing the drums for Jason Aldean, amongst a myriad of other artists, just by using those, remembering people's names, going into situations like studios, recording studios. He would memorize and commit to memory everybody's name, no matter what position. If it was they were, the janitor, if they were the front receptionist, he would remember their name. If he was going to make a coffee run, he would ask them, "Hey, can I get you anything?" Even though he had this perceived elevated stature that he was part of the band that was recording with this major artist, they would. He says in his philosophy, he told me this. Everybody there wants to move up. He says they're going to remember me when they get into a position of influence, and when I need help, chances are they'll be able to help me. He says, that's not the main reason why I do it, but why not? Why do it any way else but this? This way, And it made such an impact on me when he told me this. Now, have I pulled it off perfectly in my life? No, absolutely not.
I don't think any of us are perfect in that regard, but that's a wonderful philosophy. And of course, how does someone treat the custodian? And you'll find out who they are.
Yep.
And we love our custodians, by the way. And you have to treat them as an equal staff member and lift them up because we need good work from them. But
it's acknowledgement.
You're
valued.
Yeah.
So before we get too late on this,
what's your problem?
Gotta fire it off and ask you what is the problem you're having these days?
What is the problem I'm having?
What
these
is
days?
the one problem, or maybe a challenge you're having?
Well, I think the challenge that we're having is that as we transition, we were a middle school for so long, and as we transition to a high school, we don't have a high school. What I'm saying is, last year, we had 120 eighth graders, and I had to convince them to stay at a school that does not have a culture in the high school, athletic teams, there's no prom. See, because we started stepping 1 year at a time. We were 6th, 7th, and 8th. Then last year we were 6, 7, 8, 9. This year we're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh,
now
okay.
we're building.
You're fading in.
We're transitioning into a high school. Well, there have been some kids that, Dr. Bell, I really love the middle school, but I'm going to go to this high school. There's already a high school there.
Right.
And I spoke with another principal was actually Dr. John Ash, who's the principal of Central Magnet in Murfreesboro. It's the number one school in the state of Tennessee. Here and there, there's 2 or 3 schools that kind of shift that every year. Number 7 school in the United States based on ACT average. Their ACT average at Central Magnet is 31. And that's the school that we collaborate with. We take our kids down there every year. That Chinese proverbs, better to see once than to hear 1,000 times. I want them to see what excellent looks like. So we load them up on coaches, buses, and take them down there, and I want them to see it. This is what the number 7 school in the United States looks like.
Right.
And he told me the first year, about 12 years ago, he transitioned. He said that first year, I only got 67 kids to graduate out of that first group. He said, you're going to lose some because they wanted to go to Riverdale or Oakland, some of those big schools in Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
And he said, you're going to have to hold on to them as tight as you can. Well, I think we've got 69 in that first class. I always knew that 67 was a benchmark.
Right.
The best school in Tennessee only kept 67. And he's got a picture of them in his office. I'm going to have that picture over my mantle in retirement, that picture of these 69 kids that stayed and took this journey with us. Now, in the freshman class this year, we've got 80. So we're going to go up every year.
Yeah.
But we have some kids that go to Springfield High School. We had one that went to JP2, one that went to Davidson Academy. You know, we just lose a few every year.
But here's the one thing to not to interrupt you, but I'm having this thought that just popped into my head of a revelation, I guess, or a what'd you say before? The
Epiphany.
Epiphany.
Yeah.
And it comes back to sales and selling. Okay, you've built the relationship with these kids over the past, the middle school time of their scholastic career.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I'm thinking that I want to have a traditional high school experience. I want the proms. I want this, that, and the other thing. And one of the biggest things in sales and selling is agreeing with the objection. Right? Now you're getting presented with an objection. I understand. I completely agree. I get it. But what can I do to get you to reconsider? What's the one thing holding you back? That's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
Well, if we had a prom, so if I were to make sure that you have a prom, would that keep you around?
I learned enough about sales to know you try to isolate that one thing and then say, let's fix that.
Right. Well, I would imagine that your average would go up if you just, okay, so if I'm able to do that, would you reconsider?
Would you stay?
Right.
Well, and then sometimes you find out that's not the real reason.
True.
It's a smoke screen.
Right.
We're going to go up every year.
Right.
And I know that we will. In 2027, we'll offer all high school sports. We're co-oping with Springfield High School right now. So if a kid wants to play football, they're playing for Springfield. Well, we're going to start transitioning into some high school sports and start offering those things that kids love to do.
Right.
Kids love their school because of Friday night lights, because of the prom, because of those spirit type things.
Right.
And that's what we have to build. And we will.
Yeah. Just takes time.
Here's the thing. I've already seen it.
Yeah.
I already know what's going to happen. Now that sounds crazy, but
no, it doesn't.
I know what it looks like, and that's where we're going. We're not there yet.
Right. You saw the vision back when you took over.
I know exactly where we're going.
Right.
And it's
that oak tree on a hill.
It's every single day getting a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And that parent in your office that wants to take your head off, that's part of the process to get where we're going. Because what can I do in that moment to turn that parent and make them realize I chewed that guy's head off and he sat there and returned that with kindness. I want to follow that person.
Right. Now I feel bad for doing that.
It's not about me, and it's not. But if everybody in the organization can do that by me modeling what that looks like, we're going to we're going to get closer to that oak tree on a hill every single day.
Let me ask you this, because this just kind of came to mind. Is there a crisis on teachers lately in the past couple of years? I mean, is that a factor in what you're facing and doing what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What has happened since the pandemic, there have been teachers that have not come back to the profession.
Right.
And I've even, you see that on a macro level across the United States, but I've seen it on a micro level right in my school. We have a mom that has a baby and takes a maternity leave, but then calls me and says,
I'm done.
I think I'm going to stay home.
Yeah.
So we've lost some teachers. We've had retirement. 10 years ago, when we had a position open, I would get 10 to 15 applicants. And it was kind of tough because you had to work through them.
Yeah, yeah.
Which ones am I going to call for an interview? Because that's an hour. That's a lot of time. Now, when a posting goes up, nobody applies for it.
Oh, my goodness.
That's everywhere.
Wow.
And less young people are getting into the profession. I've got a great example of that. A few years ago, UT Martin would put out 60 graduates in the spring that wanted to be a teacher. We recently got the list of upcoming graduates, and I think it had like 7 people on it, or 7, 8, something like that. So 10 to 15% of what it was just a few years ago. It is very difficult to be a teacher today with the number of things that you have to do. It can be very difficult. And I think some young people are saying there are better ways to make a living.
Yeah.
And, people don't get into education to become rich. They don't do it. They do it because they love kids. And it sounds like a corny Hallmark card or movie, but it's the truth. They really love kids. They've got good hearts, and they want to make a difference in this world.
Passion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a passion-driven profession.
It's interesting because radio was the same way, right?
Yeah.
In the 80s and 90s and the 70s, a radio guy, on-air production, any of the actual side where you produce the product, whether it's music, whether it's talk, any of that, there was passion involved. But the compensation was also, if your talent dictated that kind of compensation, they paid you for it, right? And whenever a position opened, they got barraged with resumes. Everyone wanted to be in the radio business, right? That changed in 1996 with the Telecommunications Act, which allowed big companies to start buying up radio station properties like they were real estate. And then, they would pile on more jobs and duties and responsibilities to people that have been handling one or two. So you got to wear more hats. Oh, by the way, you're going to do it for the same salary. We're just going to double and triple up on your workload. Trust me when I tell you this. Solve this problem sooner rather than later, because radio right now is a wasteland, right? And it's like, look at that, what happened there, and try and get ahead of this wave.
Well,
and it's got to come in the form of compensation.
It's real, and it's happening. And the state is actually taking away some of the requirements because they had to.
Right.
If you've got a college degree and you get hired by a principal, we'll approve you for a year.
Right.
And it could be a degree in anything.
Right.
But
because the supply of teachers is dwindling.
We don't have enough.
It's supply and demand, man. It's the demand's still there.
So the demand is absolutely there.
So when you have demand, right, a high demand, and you got low supply, guess what happens? The amount of money you got to pay to get the talent goes up.
It's going to go up.
It's got to go up.
Yeah.
You got to make that happen, buddy. Be the leader on that. That's how you're going to fix that problem.
Well,
because passion only goes so far. Trust me.
No, that's true. We live in a real world.
I got to the point in my life, and this, that I was like, I got to feed a family here. So I had to go off on my own and become an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I'm glad I did, because I still see people in the radio business languishing. Okay, they're still ardent believers.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are a commoditized industry now. All right, you're competing with podcasts. There's so many other things that are taking up that slice of the pie, and the slices are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, you guys didn't invest. You treated it like a commodity and a real estate option. That's bad. So I'm just telling you right now, on record, if they don't fix this problem, it's going to be a huge problem in the next half decade to a decade.
I agree.
Yeah.
And we're already feeling it.
Yep.
And it's not, once again, it's not something you can fix
Right.
really
It takes
quickly.
time.
You've got to go to younger kids that are in school and try to promote the profession.
Right.
Work with universities to make it easy. That's not a good way to put it, but to make it more doable and maybe people to cross over into the teaching profession with some education. But there's going to have to be large scale systemic changes to address this. It's not a small problem.
No,
it's a big
no,
problem.
and it always comes down to money.
Yeah,
it always comes down because I'm not going to take on everything that you're seeing and happening in public education, and I'm seeing it because my kids are in public school. You're seeing the teachers; they're building the bigger buildings over here. Over at the high school, they're actually building enough room where they could start having other kids from if they want to go to Summit, they can. They've got the room. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, they got the room. Do they have the teachers? That's the problem. Okay. Because they're dropping like flies. They don't have to stick around. There's only so far someone's going to go if you keep on piling more stuff onto them. And if they're just glorified babysitters, dude, this is not going to work. This is a short-term solution.
Well, teachers are having more and more piled on them. It typically comes from state, federal government. There's a movement in Tennessee right now. There's a legislator that is considering bringing a bill up that would kick the federal government out of Tennessee education.
Right.
It's 8% of education funding comes from the federal government.
Right.
8%. So for every dollar, 8 pennies of it comes from the federal government. But what they put you through for that 8 cents, this legislature is saying it's not even worth it.
Right.
In other words, we're going to stop taking your 8 cents and we'll take care of it. It's a pretty radical idea. But,
it totally is.
But it is in the news right now, and I actually put it in my newsletter a couple of weeks ago because I want my teachers to be informed of what's going on. And but federal mandates and federal paperwork.
Right.
It is a paperwork
Go figure.
Mountain.
The federal government, right.
Anytime.
And it costs money to do that.
Well, one of the points I made in my newsletter was sometimes it costs more to manage the federal situation than you actually get from
your ROI is next to nothing.
You're actually below less than zero just working with the federal government.
Right.
And
that's so interesting that you bring that up because you're talking about localization. Right.
Localization.
And the radio stations, getting back to the radio business, the radio stations, anytime you get something that's homogenized, like radio had been, even in the car business, when you have dealerships that are owned by these massive groups and they want to just kind of blanket like policy and everything and shove it down each individual dealership's throats and then take away the autonomy of each dealership of how to operate, which happened here in Nashville. Even in my time selling cars, it happened during I picked two industries that were on the decline, right? I'm like, what did I do? But it was amazing the parallels that I saw from radio into the car business, how parallel they were. And the radio stations that are winning the battle are the ones who choose to be local, the ones who go with the jocks who are alive and local. You can call them. You can talk about music. You can, they're at community events. They're legitimately there. It's not some guy out of St. Louis that's doing the afternoon drive shift. No, he's right there in the studio. Guys, that's what's going to win. That's how you're going to turn the ship. With the car dealerships, I went to a Mercedes training when I sold Mercedes, and they had world-class training down in Alabama. And they had these classroom modules. I don't think I've ever told this story on this podcast. And I bought in so heavy into the message that they were talking about. Everything surrounded with the Mercedes brand was driven to delight. It was a hashtag. And everything was like, just delight your customers, delight your clients. Make sure that you show you're passionate about the product, that you could tell the story, that, the marketing behind it just completely makes sense. And in those classroom modules, there were about 2 of them over 2 days. The first one was like, I completely believe it. They were showing videos of salesmen that were literally taking time out of their day to go visit their clients in the hospital, take them flowers, the relationship aspect you were talking about, right? Yep. And the second day, they were still having this rah-rah moment. And at that point, I kind of had one foot out the door. I was getting ready to kind of get out of the business. I had had enough. And I mean, it was just a series of getting kicked in the C.O. Jones over and over and over again. And it all had to do with compensation. And this dealership where I was working lost some of their key people that had been there for a long time, all because this one company wanted to homogenize everything. The VP would walk in, not make eye contact, nothing, right? So I spoke up and I told the teachers, look, I understand. I buy into it. Everything you're saying, I have a marketing background. This is what I did in radio, is help dealerships brand themselves. I completely agree. I said, but you're missing one component. And they go, what's that? I said, compensation. And I said, you have any idea what's happening on the front lines with us salespeople that are starting the relationships for your brand? Do you have any idea how mistreated we are? And it was like a slow clap. People were starting to all of a sudden, yes. And they pulled me aside after the class. I said, I'm probably going to tick some people off. Mm-hmm. And I said, I hope it doesn't get back to my dealership. They're like, no. We get it. We hear you and we know what's happening. And there is a plan in place to fix it. Okay. That's all I need to know. So it was just amazing how this same thing's happening with teaching, Bal, mm-hmm. And it has to be that ship. That's a big ship to turn, and it may be another sales element is sitting down in front of these new teachers coming out. Okay, you've decided to not pursue the profession. Why is that? And what's the one thing we have to change? Well, the compensation. Okay, what's the number? What would get you interested in this again?
What would it take?
Right.
Well, pay is a big one.
Yeah.
And then when they get
Respect.
into it and they go home exhausted, to the point of, I've talked with teachers and colleagues that got home at 6 o'clock and fell asleep.
Yeah.
And lost their entire night. Because
It's a long day.
You're not just physically tired, you're mentally tired. And it's getting more difficult. I'm seeing behaviors now that I didn't see 10 years ago. And, I don't know if it's since the pandemic or social media has a lot to do with it. When you put a TikTok app on a 12-year-old's phone, their maturity level is not such that they can manage that successfully.
Right.
12, 13 years old and getting in chat rooms. And we spend a lot of time dealing with that. And, 10 years ago, that was not something that we were dealing with.
Right. Yeah.
That's a new...
That's a new paradigm.
That's a new paradigm that we're working with.
There's so many different elements, and it's, when getting back to radio, when they stopped respecting what we did in the car business, when they stopped respecting what they did, they stopped the training, they stopped, investing in us. They started telling us that, well, hey, we can start we're going to have you sell and do the F&I component and offer the loans and everything like that. Wait, what? When am I going to have the time to do this? And am I going to be paid for? Well, it's going to be part of your commission, but we'll figure that out. Well, no. This is radio all over again, guys. This is radio, and I still see the ads for radio. The production director position or program director or afternoon drive, competitive salaries in the 40s. What, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
In the 40s in Dallas and a top 10 radio station, 40s?
That's poverty.
That's poverty.
Yeah.
You're not getting good luck. You might as well hire a high school kid at that point.
Well, you laugh at 40s. That's what teachers start at.
I know.
And
but I mean, take a cue from the airline industry. They went through that too, where they were underpaying pilots, and they've got how many lives in their hands, flying a tube through the air.
Yeah.
And it's like they actually turned it around and said, okay, we got to pay these guys.
Yeah.
You got to pay them. You've already got so many components going into it, especially with a passion-driven industry. Teaching's passion-driven, all right? And like you said, they don't get into it to get rich, but they got to be respected. They got to be compensated to keep up with that. If you meet those criteria, you're going to win. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I've seen it happen over and over again, and radio is paying the price. It's going to be a wasteland. You know, the ones that are going to stick out are the ones that are local.
Yeah.
And take care of their people. So,
good points.
With that being said, thank you for being on.
Hey, Jim, I don't usually sit down and talk about what we do every day. It was enjoyable.
Yeah. Hopefully it was cathartic.
You just do it every day.
Yeah. This is something that I do, and I think I believe in you that you're going to be a voice of positivity and influence over the next 10 years for sure, especially if you're the voice in the wilderness that kind of turns the tide of everything for the profession and for the industry of public schools. Because I'm telling you, I've got a bad feeling in the next 10 years, public school is going to be in trouble. And eventually you might have to go private. You know, and I think that's going to become a huge industry. Parents are going to have enough. Screw it. I'm not going to pay my taxes for public school. I'm going to go there where they're teaching practical skills to my kids. They're paying their teachers right. I will pay a premium for that. That could happen.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
It is. People have said that public education is too big to fail.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see cracks. And since the pandemic, 2 million kids across the United States no longer go to public schools.
Wow.
That's 2 million. And that's the beginning. Parents are taking different options. And because of a lot of societal things that are happening in our country, not as much in Tennessee.
Yeah.
But in our country, people are fed up and they said, I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And I would contend that public education is not too big to fail.
It isn't. Anything is.
And we had best, I put that in my newsletter a couple of weeks ago as well. If we don't start making some better decisions, and in my position now, I'm not in a position to make any of those decisions. I'm just a principal at a school, but people are going to have to start that are the big decisions makers in public education. If we don't do something, this is the beginning of the end. It's not the end, and it's not the middle, but
the end will be when the parents are outraged or the taxpayers get the option to opt out of funding.
And that's starting to happen.
Yeah.
In some of your red states, you're seeing those things go through. Yeah. And it's going to be an avalanche of them.
Yeah. That'll be the last
already. I kind of keep my ear to the ground on some of these things.
Yeah.
And it's happening.
People like you are important because you believe in what you do. You absolutely believe in what you do. The proof in the pudding has been the time that you spent and the results you've gotten, with the kids and how they believe in themselves. Just starting with calling them scholars up until what you're doing now, and just how the transformation of that school. I mean, I've seen it over the time that I've worked with you. From honestly, the first time I met you, I was like, okay, we're doing videos for schools. I'm not sure what this is going to accomplish, but as I've seen this unfold and visited you every year to shoot videos and things of that nature, I became a believer just on the outset, just on the periphery.
Well, you were meeting some of our kids too.
Right.
I wanted them to start leading some of those, and I wanted to put our product right there in front of you.
But from an outsider looking in, feeling culture, you get a feeling. You walk into a place, you get a feeling. It's either going to be something that, this I'm not comfortable here. Mm-hmm. I walk into your school, every kid is respectable. They look you in the eye. You don't feel like you're in danger or anything like that. So kudos to you. I mean, that's my take on it.
Well, it's been a journey.
It certainly has.
Journey continues.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. I don't know how people can find and follow you, but you do have a book forthcoming, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Do you have a LinkedIn or anything that people can connect with you? Nothing at all? Facebook?
I don't do social media.
We got to get you on social media. You want to promote a book, man? That's what you got to do these days.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anybody who's out there that can help Dr. Bell get all those things set up, let's make that happen, because I believe he's a person of influence that is in the making, and this story is going to be a lot bigger than you realize. I honestly believe that. I think it could be, another lean on me type of situation. So thank you again for coming all the way down here. I really do appreciate it. It's always a great time having a conversation with you. And please look us up if you want to help us out with getting that 10,000 download mark per episode. whatsyourproblempodcast.com. Again, subscribe, share, rate, and review. Tell your friends about it. And if you think anybody is a good candidate to be a guest on the show, let me know. Or if you think you're a good candidate, Tennessee, Middle Tennessee business owner, professional, or even some cases, principal of a high school, of a soon-to-be high school, a magnet school. Thank you again, sir, for coming out here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.